Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Got something special today. This is more fan footage sent in by Glen. And Glen is Dutch. This is from the Netherlands. If you couldn't tell from the narrow roads, from the crosswind, from their overall really fast racing. I mean, God, is it just like every European that sends me footage is fast, or are Europeans just faster than Americans? I think Europeans are just faster than Americans. I mean, maybe we can hold our own in a crit, but Glen is new to the sport. He comes from mountain biking, but he averaged 350 watts. 350 watts for an hour, new to the sport. But not only that, he raced incredibly smart. I mean, you can be the strongest dude in the field, but if you make a bunch of strategic blunders, like, it doesn't matter. You're going to lose the race. But Glen was smart about it. I mean, he told me in his write-up from the beginning what he wanted to do, what his goal was to force a breakaway. And that's because although Glen has decent snap in his legs, he wasn't confident that he could win out of this field. And that's kind of step number one for strategy. The first thing you should be thinking about is your competition. And hey, if you're confident you can win in a field sprint out of the group, then by all means, save your legs, wait for a field sprint, and try to keep it all together. But Glen was smart about this, and I'd already identified a couple of guys who were better field sprinters than him, so he's like, well, I got to get away from them. So that was step number one, and what I want to do is show you guys how he executes that strategy, how he makes the breakaway, because I think there's some valuable tips in there that you guys can bring to your next race, to your next group ride. For those of you who aren't field sprinters, or even if you are a field sprinter, like, it's always easier to win a sprint out of a smaller group, right? So stay tuned. We're going to fast forward a bit, and I want to show you guys how he forced a selection and made the winning breakaway. All right, we are only 2 laps into this race, and already they're chasing hard. There's a dude off the front. Glen is sitting back here getting a good draft, still doing 900 watts, but you know the guys on the front chasing are doing even more. And while Glen's sitting in right here and letting these other guys chase, I should mention that Glen is a big boy. He's 80 kilograms. I should also mention that this is an interclub race. That's why you're going to see a lot of the same jerseys. That doesn't mean it's any less competitive. This is kind of like the Alviso of the Netherlands, is how Glen pitched it to me. But now the chase is over. That guy is caught. And if your plan is to join the breakaway, or make the breakaway, the first thing you have to do is establish a gap, right? To do a counterattack. So I want to list the reasons, there's 4 of them that I can count, that right now is the best time to launch a counterattack and establish that gap. The first one is, a breakaway was just brought back. The field is strung out. The second one is, they just went through a crosswind section. Third, they're approaching this technical section of the road, and it's harder to hold a wheel and to hold a draft. And finally, the fourth is they're approaching this about 20 to 30 second climb, the only climb on the course. So if you're looking for a reason to counterattack, there's 4 of them. This is the best time, and Glen doesn't disappoint. He pulls through, and he smashes over the top of this climb and forces a selection. And Glen's doing some big power numbers right here to make sure that he establishes that gap. And without a rear-facing camera, let me tell you what's going on. He is growing this gap. He has recognized the guy on his wheel as a very capable and a very willing brakemate, so he's committing to it. And this is looking good for Glen. And immediately, his brakemate pulls through, and they're able to work together and stretch this gap out. But it's a second lap breakaway, and there's a lot of fresh guys behind who are going to be really eager to chase that back. And sure enough, boom! There goes the counterattack. So what does Glen do? He lets these other guys chase. He's going to capitalize on their mistake. I mean, they were so eager to chase that guy back. And what they did is they went super hard, and then you can see they're just sitting up right here, and Glen gets into that slingshot position that I talk about so much on my channel, and probably overdoes a bit on the watts there. That was like 1,250 watts. I don't think he needed to do that much because his position was so perfect, and he just carried all that momentum. Front rudders are slowing down, Glen is speeding up, and that's free gap right there. That's the easiest way to get a gap. And as he approaches that rider who is off the front, he gives him a little whistle, and he just falls right into some decent power here, and now he's going to do the same thing as before. If at first you don't succeed, dust yourself off and try again. He's gonna push pretty hard here, establish the gap, and then he's going to fall into rotation, hold it at threshold, and here comes the rider again. That's what I like seeing about these European riders. I mean, I don't know how skilled these guys are in terms of like their racing category or however that works in Europe, but just from the way that they behave in these breakaway groups tells me that they know what they're doing. A little elbow flick checking the gap, and now they're off to the races. So Glen's done it again. What he's accomplished is he's gotten separation without completely killing himself. So he's positioned it and he's timed it really well, and he has joined another capable and willing brakemate to increase his chances of making this a successful breakaway to the finish. And after one more rider bridges across, it's this group of 3 that makes it all the way to the finish. And this is where I want to point out something important that I kind of touched on earlier, and that's Glen identifying his competition, realizing who these riders are, and sometimes you don't have that luxury, right? If you're just starting out to racing, if it's a field you're not familiar with, if it's a racing district you're not familiar with, maybe you don't know the riders you're racing against, but if at all possible, try to familiarize yourself with your competition and identify those riders who have certain skill sets. So what Glen's done here is he's pointed out these two guys right here. So first, this guy with the yellow and orange shoes, Glen knows that he is a pure time trialist, doesn't have much snap, so he's definitely somebody that you need to look out for before the final sprint, maybe in the last lap, maybe even in the last 5 laps, somebody that's going to go early, that sort of thing. Keep an eye out for him. Now, this other guy with the white and silver shoes, he is more of an all-rounder, and he does have a little bit of a punch, so Glen's looking out for him in the final 200 meters. And although Glen's confident that he can win if it comes down to a 3-up sprint out of this group, he's still keeping this information in the back of his head, so he's not surprised by a big attack with like 5 laps to go by the time trialist, or he's not really surprised and gets caught out of position by the all-rounder inside the last 500 meters. And it's good news for Glen here because they haven't really played any games, and we are well into the last lap. We're approaching a kilometer to go, and still they're just rotating nicely. But the fun and games are about to end here. You see the elbows are flicking, the power is coming down, the speed is coming down, and this is the cat and mouse. But if I were Glen, I would have been doing the same thing. Hey, just continue smooth pulls, no attacking, just wait as long as you possibly can, hopefully until 250 meters to go, and then you can launch that winning sprint. But now they're forcing him to the front. You see his powers come down quite a bit, but he's doing a pretty good job here to not, you don't want to go down to like 100 watts, because if you're going really slow, counterattacks are more effective, right? It's easier to accelerate when you're going slow than it is when you're going fast. So you want to keep a certain amount of speed. But sure enough, there goes the big attack by the time trialist. And good thing for Glen, it seemed like he had his head on a swivel, like he should have. He should have been looking back, and he should have been expecting this. And it seems like he was. He jumps right on, he gets in the draft, and now you just hope that the time trialist guy continues pedaling hard. Unfortunately, it doesn't really look like he does. But still, if you're Glen, you don't want to take the front, because with 400 meters to go, that is way too far. What you're going to end up doing if you attack now, if you sprint now, is you're just going to lead out white and silver shoes. So you don't want to do that. Glen's doing a really good job here to occupy the inside line. He doesn't want to get surprised by white and silver shoes to attack up the inside right there. And now we're inside of 200 meters to go. So at this point, he just jumps on it. And this is the timing that you want. Now it's a drag race. Remember, guys, he did 350 watts for an hour before this. Still putting out decent power. He is a thick boy, 80 kilograms, but that's decent power. He holds it all the way to the line, and it's a well-deserved win. And my only real criticism here is he should have been sprinting on the far left-hand side of the road, and that's the downwind side of the road, because you want to take away as much of the draft advantage that white and silver shoes has behind you. And as you can see from this spectator footage, it was actually quite close, so he almost lost it there at the end, and I think he would have had a much bigger margin of victory had he been on the far left-hand side of the road. As always, guys, thanks for watching, and I will catch you at the next one.